And joining us now is the world-renowned UFO researcher portrayed in Steven Spielberg's movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Let's all welcome Dr. Jacques Vallée. Until just sitting here talking to you that you didn't do this for a living, track UFOs. You?
No, I was trained as an astronomer, and my interest started actually as an astronomer at Paris Observatory.
So what piqued your interest? How did you get interested in all this?
We were tracking satellites. We were working for the French government, and this was in the early days of the space program. And we started tracking things that should not have been there, that were truly unidentified. And one night we got enough data points on one of these objects that we would have been able to run that tape through a computer and compute an orbit and try to see it again. And the man in charge of the project actually confiscated that tape and erased it out of fear of ridicule. And that's really what started my interest, because scientists are not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Now you got your hands on government files and...
Later, when I moved to the United States, I had the privilege of working with the man who was the scientific consultant for the U.S. Air Force, Dr. Hynek, at Northwestern, and I spent 4 years in my spare time going through 11,000 cases of the Air Force files.
Now, what does the Air Force say?
Well, much of that could be explained. I mean, it's 80%, at least 80% of all the cases are in fact mirages and reflections and known phenomena. But you're left with thousands of cases that are not explainable. And the Air Force would try to explain them away with completely ridiculous explanations. I remember one case where the witness saw something that he thought was a large bird at first, but it had 4 lights. And the Air Force explained it as a bird with 4 lights. That was the official explanation. It's still in the file.
Way to go, guys! Hey, how many sightings do they have that they can't explain?
There is some argument about that, but it's in the official files close to 1,000 that are unidentified according to their.
Why did they want to cover all this stuff up?
It was, well, first, to the credit of the Air Force, every time they went to the scientific community did not want to touch it. There is, as Marina said earlier, there is an arrogance in the scientific community. No, don't bother me with a phenomenon that doesn't fit.
It's because scientists want to base every single thing on fact, right?
Well, yeah. and there are lots of facts, but there is a lack of good scientific research in this field, and I think it's a crime. I think the government data should be turned over to the scientific community, and there should be some level of activity within the scientific community to look at it.
Because this goes on all over the world, right? All different governments have
absolutely
the same stuff going on, right?
I've had a chance to study cases, of course, in France, all over Europe, and in South America, and of course in the U.S.
What's the weirdest case you've ever studied?
I'm not sure weird is the right term for it. The most stimulating from a scientific point of view is a case in France in which a farmer was starting his tractor at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he saw something in his field some distance away, and he thought it was a helicopter or maybe a strange car that shouldn't have been there in his field. So he walked over, and all of a sudden he was paralyzed. He saw 2 small creatures. They were not quite the ones that you have here. They were very small, but they had normal heads, and they had normal human features. But he was paralyzed, and they started speaking to each other in some strange language, went back into the object took off. The interesting thing is that there were traces left. Those traces were studied by various agencies of the French government. There was no question he was not lying. The traces could not be duplicated. And he was paralyzed for 20 minutes after the object left, which is very interesting from the point of view of the effect of the kind of radiation that object may have been creating. And this is a very common report on the part of witnesses of this feeling of paralysis.
Right. Stay tuned, because our next guest